Hey everybody, we're at Colao's with Executive Chef Kristian Young. He's going to show us how to make a delicious scallop dish with homemade pasta. He's going to make the pasta first. That's pappardelle. That's a wide, fat, flat noodle, and it's pretty simple, he says. So let's see what he does.
All right. Yeah, it's just minimal ingredients here. So we have some 00 flour. It's very nice, fine, powdery flour. And typically what I like to do is make just a little hole in the middle. We're going to add our eggs. You can use egg yolks or whole eggs. We'll add our kosher salt here. And a little bit of water. And then basically I use my fingers kind of like a fork, and I slowly stir this in. And I'll add some more moisture as I go along. So as this starts to come together, you can see how there's a little bit of dry flour on the side. You can tell by the color we're good on the eggs. I'm just going to add a little bit of my oil and a little bit of my water to the last of this batch here. So once you get it into a dough ball here, the easiest way that I've found is to actually transfer it out of the bowl and onto the table. All right, so we got a little bit of extra flour here. I like to put a little flour on the table. And the trick is to actually work the dough ball into the table. It's not actually my hand that's doing the work. The table's actually stretching the bottom of the dough.
Danger of over kneading the pasta dough?
With pasta dough, your shoulder's going to get sore before you run the dough ball.
Okay.
Honestly, like you will run out of energy before you can, before you're able to over knead it.
That's good, because I tend to overdo stuff like that.
So the dough starts to spring back at me a little bit, and we're almost there. That's the easiest way to tell. You'll see the dough just kind of push back at you after you put a thumbprint in it. And there we go. You see how it rises right back up? That's our dough ball.
You've done that before?
Just once or twice.
Once or twice.
Yeah, and then if we're going to let it rest, which we should before we go to knead it, just take a little bit of olive oil. I'll keep it from getting dry and cracked out there. One little tip or trick, the best way to get excess dough off your hands is to actually rub it in the flour. The flour will dry it up and it'll come right off. If you put it under the sink, you're going to end up with a bunch of wet dough that never comes off your fingers.
Yes, or the sink.
Or the sink. So, all right, our next step, we're going to get this into more manageable pieces here. So simply just cut it in half with a bench scraper. You can use a regular knife as well if you'd like. I'm just going to cut this into quarters. So from here, take this, kind of flatten it out. One of the things with working with a pasta roller is you don't want the dough to be more than twice as thick as the amount that you're going for, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. So simple little roll out. If you don't have a rolling pin handy, you really can stretch this by hand. It's not that difficult. Mm-hmm. And from here,
in the air like pizza
it does not stretch quite like pizza dough. No, unfortunately not. But so we take this, it's about twice as thick as I'm going to put it through. I like to run it through twice on each size. And for this pasta, I take it down to a number 5. There we go. Alright. So if we end up like this will turn into a beautiful dough. Sometimes if we don't get it thin enough, we'll just stretch it, add a little bit of flour to it, and then we'll run it right back again. I had a feeling this might happen since we didn't let it rest long enough to actually it's important to let it rest. That's what allows the glutens to kind of, those gluten strands to stretch back and actually make a proper dough.
How long would you let it rest?
Typically with pasta dough, half an hour is plenty of time. All right, so we're almost finished here. We're running it through about 2 times on each size, starting with size number 1 and working our way down to size number 5. I like to use the outside of my hands as not to rip holes through it, not to have like, you know, fingerprints and gouges going through your pasta dough. So, and here we are about to do the final size. So when we're ready to cut it into noodles, it's about this thickness here. Probably about as thick as maybe 5-6 sheets of paper. Really all depends on the pasta and what you're going for with how thick you want to roll it. If it's a stuffed pasta, maybe a little bit thicker so it holds the filling. If you're going for, you know, a spaghettini, you can go even a little bit thinner. All right, so we are done rolling it out. So this is the pasta roller. You can see it just has smooth, even lines there. And this is the actual pasta cutter for the pappardelle. Now, if you don't have this attachment, you can very easily do it by hand as well with a chef knife. Find the gears, make sure it's securely in place, and back to it. Nope. There you go. All right, so if you're at home and you don't have one of these fancy pasta cutters, this is the traditional way, you know, generations ago when there was no such thing as a KitchenAid mixer. And just do a little bit of flour in between each layer just to make sure that you're not, when you cut down, you're not pressing into yourself. Pretty simple, straightforward. And then you just go through. And that's it. You have pasta.